Hi everyone, we're going to listen in on a conversation with the faculty of the Master of Arts and Certificate in Foreign Language Teaching at Michigan State. In the near future, we are going to the Michigan World Language Association conference, and we're exhibiting at ACTFL. And so the MyWilla conference has 2 days in person and then a virtual day, and ACTFL is all virtual again. So right now we're recording videos in preparation for them to be on the ACTFL platform. And so I just realized as we were working on this virtual presentation that I'm actually in a way confident that I can get something out of that conference in a way that a year ago I wasn't confident that I was going to get a lot out of that conference. And I think it's worth it for us to have an exhibitor page at ACTFL Virtual in a way that I wasn't sure about a year ago. And so I wanted to ask you guys, when you hear that a conference is going to be virtual now, what do you think about virtual conferences? So what's something that you miss? We've asked this before, but what do you miss when you go to a virtual conference especially one that you're familiar with as a face-to-face conference?
So one of the first things that I probably miss the most is this idea that within a presentation, you're constantly co-constructing knowledge with your audience members. Like you get a chance to get up and put out these ideas, and they're usually really complex ideas or really interesting ideas. And you can kind of read, the faces of your audience, and they give you feedback, and they challenge some of your ideas much more so than you typically get in a virtual environment. And sometimes you actually have these additional conversations that continue after the presentation. But it's that moment where you're kind of finishing each other's sentences and ideas, and you're coming to this common understanding about some of these ideas that you don't get when you have these recorded videos in these virtual conferences. Because with the recorded videos, you're just by yourself behind the camera, and you put out these ideas, and then maybe you'll get a text chat later and you can think about it, but it's not at the same level it's not at the same dynamic level that you get in a face-to-face.
So when you prepare a presentation, you prepare what you're going to do when you go to the conference, but you go into that room to give that presentation knowing that a big part of it is what the audience is going to give back to you.
Exactly. And you're feeding off the audience as well. As you're seeing people nodding, then you're kind of getting this confidence, and you're kind of riffing a little bit. And you might change it up a little bit in the moment because of who's sitting there with you. There's just this chaotic complexity of a live interaction that's beautiful. And you don't get that when you craft these videos over and over again till perfection, right? But on the flip side,
I think I have gotten some, I think I have been to conferences though recently where there was this side chat going on, and then that gets retained in a way that it doesn't get retained when it's a live conversation. So if I want to scroll back through and say where were those resources and who was that I was talking to, and I didn't catch that person's name, but here it is in the chat, I can see who that was. Those kinds of things, and where the ones that also have a good way for you to find other people and chat with them a bit, and have this sort of back channel going on. The better conferences, I think, do have that. And the ones that, you can say at the end of maybe you only have 30 minutes and most of that is your recording, and then maybe you chat a little bit after that or go live for a little bit after that. But then you say, hey, there's this spatial chat space over here. You can meet me in the spatial chat that's set up for this.
I think this is what I value in virtual conferences. For example, how much do they build these affordances for us to be able to talk to people while we are watching the presentation? So it's definitely not the same. I think Fred has a great point, but I've had very good experiences while we were watching the presentation and at the same time chatting with the authors. So definitely this is a new affordance that it's not possible during a face-to-face presentation for sure. So it has created this new space in which you can hear them talking and be talking to them about the presentation at the same time. So definitely, I think it's been really nice to see how the platforms have evolved and have incorporated new tools for us to be able to establish these dialogues and better dialogues in terms of quality, so that we definitely won't have the same experience, but have a different and also high quality experience even when we are online. So if I hear about a virtual an online conference coming up in the next few years, I'll be really looking forward to seeing what the platforms are going to allow us and how we are going to be able to interact with the participants and the presenters.
I want to know what platform and what they're using.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good point. That what is exciting about this is that since all of these conferences have been going virtual, people have been innovating and exploring new ways to make them interactive. I personally like the idea that I can just see everything. Like if I go to a physical or a face-to-face conference, I'm maybe going to hit up 5 or 10 presentations, and that's on a good visit. But with a virtual one, I can get them all if I want, you know.
Yeah.
In a similar note, I think I was just going to add about being able to talk to the presenters and the participants. If I am in a face-to-face conference, I have to chase down the person if I really want to talk to them about the topic. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that's fun because you get to go to the coffee breaks and actually look for the person and talk to them. But in an online environment, sometimes you just look for the person in the conference list and you are able to send them a message. So it is easier. Maybe not as fun, but it's possible that way.
Yeah, I think I'm a little biased because I'm thinking like at least I get something, right? And there are all these people who can now attend these conferences, and I've seen students recently say, "I'm glad this conference is online because otherwise I wouldn't be able to go." And you hear that. It's not that, the difference for them is no conference or a virtual conference versus a live conference versus a virtual conference. So like I like live conferences a lot. I like traveling. I like going to Montreal. I like going, even back to Atlanta. I like, I wanted to go to San Diego for ACTFL. I certainly would like to have that chance to be in person with our students who we don't get to be in person with very much. But, a conference that has thought about how they're going to do that interaction and make it possible to do that can certainly give you some opportunities you wouldn't otherwise have. So,
and on the point,
attended several, yeah.
Sure. On the point of students attending conferences, what I have found a nice affordance with the virtual conferences is that I can have my question answered. So like in a full in-person conference, you kind of see who's in the room, and those who are maybe higher profile often get their questions answered first. But chat takes that all away, and so those who are our MA students who are looking to go to conferences, use that chat feature to ask your question, and it'll get answered. So that's really great.
And that's part of it too, I guess, is to say, what are some ways that you can take advantage of a virtual conference? So if it is virtual and you are going and you are going to be participating, then the advice about how to make the most of it is different from what the advice would be. I mean, ACTFL can be really overwhelming. I mean, the choice of what to attend and how to get there and wearing comfortable shoes because you're going to be traveling a long way from one session to the next, and where are you all going to go out and find lunch, in the short time that you have until the next one you want to get to. Those things are kind of tough, and you don't have those. You might have your kids interrupting, your dog barking as you're trying to do something in a virtual conference. But like, so what's the advice? Like one piece of advice about, how to make the most of a virtual conference if you're going to a virtual conference, what would you say?
I think we may have the illusion that we can watch everything just because it is online. And when we are face-to-face, we know you cannot be physically present at all the talks. So you previously can highlight the ones that are interesting to you. So I would give the advice of doing the same, just highlight, make sure that you are familiar with the time zone and everything. So you have those put down in your calendar, because it can get very overwhelming. You feel like you can watch everything, but you get tired very fast because of the screen too. So also optimize and plan ahead of time. I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, prioritize. That's the biggest thing for me, is prioritize which ones do you want to really engage with and which ones are you just kind of interesting in perusing at a later date.
And I think what Monique was saying about, even if you're just a master's student, just because you're working on your master's degree right now and you're not a published scholar, it doesn't mean that you can't ask a question in a session and that you shouldn't ask a good question in a session. And sometimes they want to hear those things. I mean, I've been to conferences like, where are the voices from the K-12 teachers and from the, the ones in unusual settings and the liturgical teachers and the ones that we don't normally hear from, because we do want to know what's going on. The ones who are the people who are aware that they live in an ivory tower are looking for those voices. So don't be afraid to speak up in those settings. And then I like to look around and see what those affordances are. So if there is spatial chat or there is If there are, rooms set up and that a certain time, a certain person's going to be in that room to talk, like people don't want to be in an empty room and speak into the ether. So whoever it is, like if they've agreed to give their time to be available in that space, then they want people to come in and talk to them about it. So not to be afraid to go engage. So yeah, and to set the time aside properly, like, so even though you're not traveling to another place, to actually set aside the time and make sure you're in a quiet place and you can focus. Anything else?
Yeah, I would say maybe even budget a half hour or an hour after the sessions, like after your kind of day of sessions, to process information. Otherwise, it'll just kind of be a mind dump. And that's something that happens in in-person presentations too. You come back after traveling, getting back from the conference, and you just get back into your daily grind. So my recommendation is to set aside some reflection time.
Take notes, keep your notes. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.